Everyone speaks English, yet so few know the quirks and biggest mysteries of this semi-universal language. From Shakespeare's accent being closer to an American one than to a British one, to the many forms of British English, these are the 5 things you never knew about English. English spelling is a nightmare for both native speakers and foreign learners alike, and many of the problems that arise from this are related to the history of English phonology, or put more simply, how things were pronounced at an earlier age. You see, English is not written phonetically, and there are loads of examples of this. Through and rough, Q and Q, det, and many, many more come together to form a bewildering number of words that are simply not spelt as they should be. How we got to this mess, however, can be explained. For most of the history of the English language, English had what are referred to as continental values for pronunciation, which is to say, things were spelt as they were pronounced, similar to languages such as Italian or German, where what you see is what you get. But around the 15th century, a development began to take place that would fundamentally change the pronunciation of vowels in English. This is called the Great Vowel Shift. The Great Vowel Shift contributed to the change in the phonetic values of vowels over time, and when it was completely finished around the 18th century, many words were simply not pronounced the way they had been pronounced. Add to this many words of French origin that were absorbed over time with silent letters, and you get the mess we have today. There were attempts at spelling reform, but none succeeded, and thus we are stuck with the nightmare of modern English orthography. The loss of grammatical complexity in English has begotten benefits for the language, in addition to some losses. In English, we can take almost any word and turn it into a verb, and we have done it in the past. Most other European languages lack the on-the-fly flexibility that English has. What English excels at is taking nouns and turning them into verbs without much thought about it. Sometimes this is called verbification. There are many common examples of this. Weird becomes weird out. Wing becomes wing it. Google becomes Google it. Disrespect becomes to disrespect someone. And the list goes on and on. Whatever complexity was lost in the course of history was regained in a near infinite flexibility of a modular modern English. British society has always been classist, and until comparatively recently, the variety of English called received pronunciation was the gold standard of British English. This variety of English is sometimes called Queen's English, and it was taught in schools and broadcast throughout the media for decades. This particular way of speaking sounds a bit like this.
And it was only when his descendant, the first Earl of Leicester.
However, in recent years, this has changed a fair bit. The influence of YouTube, as well as the internet in general, has weakened the influence of RP, as it is referred to, allowing many other people who speak in wildly different accents to rise to prominence. Some important and well-known YouTubers who do not speak with an RP accent are KSI, Total Biscuit, and Thunderfoot. The internet has changed much, and even has changed the social stratification of class and accent in the UK. Americans write things differently to other English-speaking countries. This is known. From honor as distinguished from honor to license as opposed to license. Many words are just spelt differently, but few people ever question why. Noah Webster was an American lexicographer who lived in the 18th and 19th century and the main person who was responsible for permanently changing the spelling of American English. This was a conscious choice on his part, made to further distinguish the fledgling United States from its former British masters. In time, his dictionary, first published in 1806, became the bedrock of American English, both in terms of spelling and referencing words. To compile it, he had to learn no fewer than 28 languages, including, but not limited to, Old English, Gothic, German, Greek, Latin, Italian, Spanish, French, Dutch, Welsh, Russian, Hebrew, Aramaic, Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit. Today, the Merriam-Webster dictionary is a classic, and one that everyone has heard of. Unfortunately, Americans these days are unfamiliar with alternative spellings, which is a pity, considering every other English-speaking country has preserved the British system. Contrary to what many believe, Shakespeare did not sound like a modern-day English aristocrat. Rather, his English was actually somewhat closer to American, and probably sounded like a cross between an Irish, Yorkshire, and West Country accent. Many of his sonnets and rhymes make little sense using a modern British accent, and only make sense if spoken as if he would have spoken them. Scholars generally refer to this as OP, which stands for Original Pronunciation, and this has become a trend for many serious stage actors taking on the work of William Shakespeare. For more top lists just like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to check out our other lists. And thanks for watching, and thanks for learning.